Goedenavond allemaal. Welkom bij deze Zoom-lezing over de actuele situatie in Iran. Mijn naam is Naomi Mestrum, ik ben directeur van het CIDI. En zoals we allemaal hebben kunnen zien, hebben we een paar ongekende dagen achter de rug met grote veranderingen in het Midden-Oosten. Het was niet de vraag of de Verenigde Staten en Israël zouden aanvallen, maar de vraag was vooral wanneer dit ging gebeuren. En het is een enorme verandering die we de afgelopen dagen al hebben gezien. En wat er is gebeurd, is ontzettend spannend wat er nu nog gaat gebeuren in Iran, in Israël, eigenlijk in het hele Midden-Oosten. Het voelt een beetje als een endgame voor het Ayatollah-regime. En we kunnen alleen maar hopen dat dit alles veel goeds gaat brengen voor de Iraanse bevolking, voor Iran, maar zeker ook voor het hele Midden-Oosten en uiteindelijk het Westen. Want wat we nu zien is het toch wel dat de Verenigde Staten en Israël de kastanjes ook voor ons uit het vuur aan het halen zijn. Vanwege alle actualiteiten wilden we vanavond voor onze achterban een webinar organiseren om meer duiding te geven bij alles wat er gebeurt en wat we misschien ook wel de komende dagen kunnen verwachten. We hebben daarvoor Meïr Javedanfar uitgenodigd. Hij is een Iraans-Israëlische Midden-Oosten-analyst, academicus, auteur en commentator. Hij doceert Iraanse Politiek aan de Reichman Universiteit in Israël. Geeft wereldwijd gastlessen, publiceert ook over de hele wereld en schrijft veel over Iran. Hij is co-auteur van een biografie over de voormalige Iraanse president Ahmadinejad. En hij zal ons vanavond zijn analyse geven over de situatie. Het is mogelijk om via de chatfunctie vragen te stellen, maar Meïr gaat eerst zelf iets vertellen, waarna er mogelijkheid is om te reageren. Meïr, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be with you all. These are very sensitive times. I look forward to being with you in the next 45 minutes at least. But should an air raid siren be heard, according to the instructions of the IDF, I will have to evacuate for about 10 minutes and then come back, and I hope you would stay with me. You can all take a nice break to make yourself a nice, what do the Dutch like to drink? Tea? Make a cup of tea and then we'll come back. As you know, in Israel, there's a two-tier system. Is the first that warns you that there's going to be an attack, and then the one, they've detected a launch from Iran, and the second one says, okay, now it's coming, and so you should go to the air raid shelter if it's not shut down. So should that happen, I will have to leave, but please stay here and I will come back and I will continue. The Iranian regime will not come between me and our Dutch friends in Holland. This is the second Iran-Israel war directly. This is not a war that Israel started. This war was started in 1989 approximately by the Iranian regime. The state of Israel was not happy about the revolution in Iran for obvious reasons in 1979. Nevertheless, it tried to come to some kind of an agreement with the Iranian regime by supplying weapons to the Iranian regime during the Iran-Iraq war. Israel was trying to find a way with people within the regime who were willing to work with Israel, perhaps with the pragmatists. It failed. Instead of establishing relations, or at least not, or perhaps not being hostile to Israel, the Iranian regime started supporting Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, Hamas, and all the other organizations whom you know. And here we are. As far as I'm concerned, Israel left it too late to attack the Iranian regime. This regime has been killing our people since 1991. We should have established deterrence against them long before 2025, which is the first time we launched an open war against the regime. Where are we now right now? The attack started on Saturday morning. The attacks happened after the Americans realized that the maximum that the Iranians were offering would not come anywhere near the minimum. The Americans wanted the Iranian program dismantled completely. But the Iranians were not willing to do that. And not only that, when they met with the Americans, according to Steve Witkoff, they were schwitzing. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not sure that the Iranians know Yiddish. They were schwitzing about having enough enriched uranium to build 11 nuclear bombs if they wanted to. And I think at that point the Americans decided, okay, this is not going anywhere. So the order was given, the war was launched. Israel was in charge of assassinating top Iranian echelon, and Americans were in charge of attacking Iranian infrastructure. This is because the Americans have laws that does not allow them to attack the military officials of another country, where in Israel, thankfully, we don't enjoy from such impediment. And the order was given to kill Ayatollah Khamenei, who incredibly stayed in his own compound. This is somebody who went to hide all throughout the last war. He went to hide. He was in hiding. He was nowhere to be seen. He was very protective of his life. But it seems that probably it's quite possible that his advisors told him that no, there's no way the Israelis are going to attack this time. So he stayed in his compound, and he was surprised on a Shabbat morning where his compound was bombed. And that was, it was, according to different reports, he was there with his family, with his wife, and he was killed. She was also killed. And since then, there has been a whole decapitation strategy of the Iranian leadership. Why is Israel doing this? What are Israel's goals in this? We have you have a macro and you have a micro. You have a tactical and you have a strategic. A tactical one, which could also be, it's kind of strategic, but it's also tactical, is Iran's missile production capabilities. Look, every country has a right to have a missile program. Every country has a right to have to be able to defend itself. If I was talking to you, if it was right now 1984, and I was talking to you from Tehran, where the Iraqis were using missiles against Iran, and it was the Iraqis who invaded Iran, I would tell you that Iran would have a right to have a missile system to protect itself against the Saddam regime who had invaded Iran. And I would be right. I would be completely right, and I would be completely within my rights to say that to you as an Iranian citizen. But sitting here as an Iranian Israeli citizen in the state of Israel, I cannot say that Iran has a right to have a missile program that can reach Israel. Because Israel never invaded Iran like the Saddam regime. Israel never wanted the peace of Iran like the Saddam regime. Israel does not even have borders with Iran. Israel helped Iran. There's absolutely no justification for a regime that writes in Hebrew on its missiles that Israel must be wiped off the face of the earth. There's no justification for such a regime to have missiles that can reach the state of Israel. Full stop. There is no justification. The Iranian regime has used its missile capabilities not for defensive purposes, for offensive purposes. I'm repulsed by the sudden bout of selective amnesia that some people have. They completely forget in 2024, after something like 34 years of proxy war attacking Israel indirectly, the Iranian regime twice in 2024 attacked us directly with missiles and with UAVs. We don't want such a regime to have missiles. And this is what Israel is going for. We did not have enough time to completely destroy the missile production infrastructure of the regime during the 2025 war. There's a whole supply chain for the production of missiles, including the manufacture of different kinds of fuel, solid fuel, you have a mixed fuel, different kinds of fuel that are used for these missiles. We did not have enough time. Mr. Trump stopped us in the last war. So the Iranians started rebuilding part of the missile program, and they're going to open at the end of this year a new manufacturing plant, new production line at one of the places in Shahrud. If you have any Iranians who are watching, Shahrud is in the Semnan province south of Tehran. That would have enabled the Iranians to produce 200 ballistic missiles a month. 200. Right now, they have something like 2,500, and just imagine they'll be able to double it within a year. And to make that 2,500 took them like 5 or 6 years. They'll be able to make it in 1 year. No, we will not accept that. No Israeli government. Netanyahu, Bennett, or Yair Golan. Nobody will accept that. But there's a bigger strategic, an even bigger strategic goal to this, and that is to overthrow the Iranian regime. That is to overthrow the Iranian regime. Why are Israel and America want to overthrow the Iranian regime? Well, in Israel, we don't want to live with a regime that has caused so much harm to our people. 2 days after the 7th of October massacre, Ayatollah Khamenei publicly stated that the arms on the forehead of the planners of the attack should be kissed. This is while the bodies of the 7th of October massacre were still warm. He then, on the same day, instructed Hezbollah to attack us, and the Houthis then attacked us. You know it better than me what they've done. Israeli people do not want to live with this threat anymore. But why now? Why are we going for the regime now? Because of what happened on the nights of 7th and 8th of January on the streets of Tehran, where the regime has killed, massacred, some people say between 20,000 to 50,000 Iranians. I don't have the exact numbers. President Trump said 32,000 killed. Okay, 32,000 in 2 nights. Not even Bashar al-Assad killed 32,000 Syrians in 2 nights. Not even Bashar al-Assad. Certainly Saddam Hussein did not kill so many Iranians. And we saw from the bravery of the people of Iran that when it comes to wanting to overthrow this regime, the people of the state of Israel have 80 million allies in every corner of Iran. Iran's population is 88 million. 90% of the public don't want to live like this anymore. They don't want to live like this anymore. This is a brutal regime that treats the people of Iran as if they were foreigners protesting in their own country. It shoots them on the streets as if they were invading Iraqi soldiers. It is making their lives impossible by mismanagement and corruption, the corruption that would make any third world African corrupt dictator blush with envy. Stories of corruption I could tell you that makes the mind boggle. People cannot live with 70% inflation every month. 84% inflation just for housing. Just what would happen in Tel Aviv? This is you know it better than me. This is an expensive city to live. If rents increased every year 84% in this city, you know what would happen? This is what's happening in Tehran. On top of that, electricity shortages, water shortages, pollution. 2 or 3 days a week it's closed. Tehran's schools are closed. You can't even breathe the air anymore. The country's becoming unlivable. People no longer see the regime as Iranian. They ask themselves, how can an Iranian regime, people who call themselves Iranian, do this to their own people? Iranians are tremendously proud. I teach Iranian politics. I've always taught my students how Iranians, time after time, have resented foreign interference in their country. And I'm talking about slicing Iran, invading Iran in 1907 and 1941, the Russians and the Brits, slicing Iran into zones of spheres of influence in the country. The leaders of the country could not go to the south or north without the permission of a foreign power. Yet today, the very same people, many of them, are cheering the attacks by foreign powers against their own regime. Do you know why? Because first and foremost, as I said, they don't see the regime as Iranian anymore. Second, the regime has used foreign proxies, foreigners from Afghanistan, Shias from Afghanistan, from Iraq, to shoot Iranians. So if the regime can use foreigners to further its interests, so can the people of Iran. The regime brings Iraqi and Afghani militias to the fight. The people of Iran will bring the Israeli Air Force and the American Air Force to the fight. This is how it is going now. This is why you see Iranians whose cities are being bombed are not rallying to the side of the regime. In fact, some of them are very happy because a lot of these sites that are being bombed, overwhelming majority with incredible accuracy, are regime buildings. We started by going after the missiles, the missile sites, the anti-aircraft sites, Navy. The Americans are doing a spectacular job going after the Iranian Air Force. Now the next stage is going after the headquarters of the police and the Basij, who are in charge of putting down protesters. One of the buildings that was bombed, one of the Basij, Basij is the militia of the IRGC. They're plainclothes militia. They're the ones who are doing a lot of the shooting and the killing alongside the police. One of the centers of the Basij was bombed yesterday. This is where Mahsa Amini was taken. You know, that girl who was not wearing a hijab properly. She was taken there and she was tortured and she died. That place was bombed yesterday. That center is 4 streets, 1, 2, 3, 4, from my house in Tehran. 4. It's in my neighborhood of Kisha. It's in my neighborhood. I live on the 9th Street. This center was on the 13th Street in Kisha. You don't hear anybody complaining because these are the centers of the regime anti-protester forces who carried out these massacres. Will this really lead to regime change? Well, that's the state of Israel and America are doing what they can. As I said, we are bombing the head of we're bombing the regime's units which are in charge of putting down the protesters. We are decapitating the regime. The rest is up to the people of Iran. There is no guarantee that there will be an overthrow of the regime. But this is the only chance we get for now to do it. If it happens, wonderful. If it doesn't happen, unfortunately, and you always have to be prepared for scenarios where you don't get what you want, that is life. At the very least in Israel, we will sleep with the knowledge that we did our best and that we destroyed Iran's nuclear program in the 2025 war, and now we destroyed Iran's missile production capabilities in the 2026 war. There is complete unity in the state of Israel, complete unity regarding this issue. Many of the people in Israel who disagree with Netanyahu's policies, like myself, I've lost count of the number of times I've gone to protest against the policies of his government. Yet when it comes to this war, everybody's united. Everybody's united. I don't like Trump. I would not have voted for him for whatever reason, but he's the best ally that we have in addressing this. He's the best ally. Of course, President Biden was also a wonderful friend of the state of Israel. I'm very grateful for his friendship. He did an incredible job to save us after the 7th of October invasion. We will always remember him. I wish him a long life. But President Trump right now, he's the best partner we have. That he's the best we have in terms of fighting this regime head on. Trump wants to have the legacy of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan brought down the communists, he believes, in the Soviet Union. Trump wants to have the legacy of bringing down pro-Russia, pro-China regimes in South America and in the Middle East, which is what he's doing. This is the best chance we have. We are taking it. We are taking it. And this war has brought also a new watershed in the Israeli military doctrine. Since 1948, the state of Israel refused to target the leaders of enemy countries. We never targeted Jamal Abdel Nasser. We never targeted Bashar al-Assad and all the others. But now there's a new doctrine. We are targeting the heads of state. With attacking with the Khamenei, we are targeting heads of state. This is a new doctrine that we have in order to deter our enemies in the future, because we don't want them to enjoy some kind of immunity because they're heads of state. Meanwhile, personally speaking, if I'm allowed to talk about how it is personally feel, as an Iranian Israeli, these have been the worst 3 years. First with the October 7th massacre, the bodies, with the trauma, the incredible trauma of what our people went through in the state of Israel, all the terrible things you know about, then the hostages, then going every other week, every week I could get my hands on to go to the hostage square. And then that war finished. There was one massacre, and then there was another massacre on the January 7th and January 8th on the streets of Iran. I cannot begin to tell you how traumatizing that was. You know, the dead bodies of the young people, they're mostly young, how brutally they were killed in great numbers, the piles of bodies, is very hard. It was very hard. But this is our history, and this is our time, and we in the state of Israel are standing up for our right to live in security. We have every right to do that. We have never done any harm to the people of Iran. We have been their great friend, and we are fighting. And this is the good fight. And the people of Iran abroad are welcoming. It's unbelievable. You see Iranians and Israelis dancing in protests across the world with the imperial flag and the Israeli flag, and that's just basically that's what our family weddings were like. we sang the Hatikva first, and then the Iranian national anthem, and now you hear it on the streets of Europe, which is absolutely wonderful to hear. And on that note, I finish. And please let's have a nice conversation. I'm sure you have questions. I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much. Iedereen die vragen wil stellen, dit kan via de chatfunctie hier in Zoom. That was just an instruction in Dutch. I have a few questions. One, given the sometimes contradictory statements made by US officials, Trump, Rubio, Hexet, what has been the deciding factor for the US to decide on military action, and what are their strategic goals?
They want to get rid of the regime because of legacy of Trump. He wants to be the new Ronald Reagan, to see somebody who took on America's enemies and dismantled the system that was anti-American. And number two, the Americans are very concerned about China's stronger hand, much stronger hand in the negotiations, because the Chinese have control of processing of 90% of the world's rare earth minerals. And the Americans want to strengthen their hand, and they want to do so by taking away the oil supplies that China enjoys from different countries. Venezuela was a major oil supplier to the Chinese, and so is Iran. So hopefully the Americans want to take that away from the Chinese to strengthen their hand, to first of all, to strengthen the hand against the Chinese. Second of all, to strengthen the sphere of influence of the United States in Latin America and now in the Middle East.
And given the damage to regime facilities and degrading of their military capabilities, to what extent is the regime capable of sustaining the suppression and popular unrest and staying in power?
That's a very good question. Look, it's an excellent question. Nobody expected the regime to collapse as soon as you kill Khamenei. Nobody expected that. But we have two precedents that show that assassinating the heads of organizations can weaken the body severely. First was Qasem Soleimani, who was assassinated by the Americans on January 2020. The person who replaced him does not even come close to his capabilities charisma, leadership skills. He does not even come close. It's unbelievable, the gap. It's huge. And as a result, the Quds force is now weaker. The other example is Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah. The person who came after him, Sheikh Naim Qasim, you can't compare the two. You cannot compare the two. So it is hoped that the person who will come after Khamenei will also be the same. He won't be able to have the same level of influence within the regime. And it is possible because, the successor has not been groomed. And in this kind of dictatorial regimes, you need to groom the person. You see it in North Korea, before the leader dies, he starts grooming his son. So people know him, so different factions of the regime know him, they can reach agreements with him, the oligarchs. There's consensus. It is very important. These regimes don't have elections, but what they need is consensus among the factions that support the regime. There was no grooming of the successor of Khamenei. So this could also be another factor which could lead to the next leader being weaker. That's the assumption. Let's see what happens in reality. I have to say these things with a lot of modesty. It's where people expect, I can understand it, people expect people like me who deal with this to be able to predict, predicting the weather tomorrow. But when in times of war and revolution, you have mini storms every day. It makes it very, very difficult to predict.
Yeah. I see some questions about the possible popular support for Pahlavi. And given the diversity of Iranian opposition and ethnic religious differences, what's your assessment on that, or even the prospect of democracy?
I have not seen any polls being done inside Iran which show how popular Mr. Pahlavi is, because you can't do that. You can't call anonymously to people in Iran, says, who would you like? You can't do that, which it's a dictatorial regime, etc. But at the same time, I have to say, in all the protests, the only name that is being called out is Reza Pahlavi. He's the only one. He's the only one. Why? Because his father was a dictator. Absolutely, there was no freedom of speech under his father. But Iranians lived far, far better economically than this regime. So people miss the economic well-beings that they had under his regime. The country progressing. Iran was, you could say, was Dubai. What is Dubai now? Iran was during the time of the Shah. Dictatorship, but with great governance and foreign investment and foreign trade. But he's promising democracy. He wants to be a transition leader. He doesn't want to be a king. He wants to be transitional leader to the next government, after the revolution, to the elections. He's going to be the transition leader because he's consensus head. There's another reason why people support him. It's because there's no one else. The regime I'm quoting these numbers because these are the only ones I have. Between 1979 revolution to 2012, the regime assassinated 162 members of Iranian opposition in 19 countries, including yours. Mm-hmm. There's no one left. Everyone's dead. In Iran, everybody's either dead or in prison. He's the only one there. But the fact that he's son of the Shah, also, people really, really miss the things his father did for the country, and they've forgiven him. They've forgiven him for the things he had. There was a state police. There was the Savak. But there's such incredible desperation in Iran. And some people think, wow, the Savak tortured people. And some people say, yeah, they didn't torture enough, because if they would have tortured more of them, we wouldn't be in this situation. This is how bad the situation is in Iran.
Yeah. I see one question that says, isn't the Revolutionary Guard so strong that no significant change is to be expected? And what would you say to people who say that the Israeli-US attacks are against international law?
I wish there was an international law that would stop Iran from killing Israeli citizens from 1991. Is there such an international law? Well, if there is no such international law, then there shouldn't be an international law stopping Israel from defending itself. So they can say, so people say it's against the international law. When the regime says that you should be destroyed and is supporting proxies, you have every right to defend yourselves. Maybe the Americans, maybe their case may be shakier. I don't know, but we have a strong case. We have a very strong case. What was the first question? Sorry.
The first one was, isn't their Revolutionary Guard so
Oh,
strong
yeah.
that no significant change is to be expected?
It is one of the major issues, but it is hoped that if there is a massive revolution in Iran with millions and millions pouring onto the streets, then the Revolutionary Guard could collapse. This is the assumption. And also a lot of these, the Iranian regime is a theocracy, okay? But the best theories to assess its behavior are actually Marxist theories of class warfare. I know it sounds like a contradiction, but inside the regime, there's a huge class warfare over this means of production. Who should have the means of production within the regime? And it's mostly economic interests. So a lot of these Revolutionary Guard people are there because they have companies and they have incredible monopoly. I mean, you think we have monopolies in Israel? Israel it's Switzerland compared to the monopolies that there is in Iran when you go to buy your cottage cheese and everything else. And I say that with a lot of irony because we have terrible monopolies in this country, but that's a different problem. But the problem is that they're also hurt because when inflation is 70%, the Iranian consumer is purchasing capability is shot to bits, and they cannot afford to buy the products that the IRGC companies are selling. They can't buy the shampoo that the IRGC company is selling or the car that is. So they're also feeling the effect. So I'm not saying they want regime change, but they want changes to the regime policies. Another possible outcome of this war could be that we have a regime in Iran. The regime stays, but with a different approach towards the West. This is one which former President Hassan Rouhani wants. It calls for rivalry, not enmity. He wants to be the competitor of the Americans and not their enemy. He wants to compete with Americans, not to kill them in the region. He wants to basically compete with Israel, but no relations, but just compete with Israel wherever it is possible, but to stop supporting terrorism and everything, because this is something we could also end up with such a model. Would the people of Iran like it? No, they want the regime to go. Would the people of Israel like it? No, we want the regime to go. But sometimes, most of the time in life, you don't get what you want. So we didn't want Hamas. Guess what? You see what's happening in Gaza.
Yeah. Another question that I see here is, what about the different ethnic and sectarian groups who live in Iran, such as Persians, Kurds, Arabs, others? How realistic is it to expect democratic rule in a country where some groups have long histories of marginalization and violence?
Very good. Excellent question. Our Kurdish compatriots don't like the Shah. And I can understand they have their own reasons. Look, Iran will not have stability unless everybody has a say. The Kurds in Iran will have to have more rights. They can't have no independence, of course, of federal state or whatever. But there is discrimination. Apparently, I have to double check this. They can't teach their language in their schools and things like that. The worst country for Kurds is Turkey, by the way. I mean, if you're really looking for apartheid, please look into how Kurds are treated in Turkey. Then you'd see apartheid. But in Iran, of course, these some of them don't like the Shah. Some of them want the republic, and of course, they're within their rights. And this is why it's going to be, please God, Be'ezat Hashem, after a revolution, it's going to be a very important process to take in everybody's consideration. And some people treat the Shah, Shah's son as if he's God, and you can't criticize him. I wholeheartedly reject that. Yes, I support the monarchy. I want a constitutional monarchy in Iran, like the one you have in Holland. But to treat the Shah as if he's beyond, criticism, which some of his supporters are doing, that's not right. And we will have to take into consideration the desires of the different ethnic minorities. But one thing I'd like to ask our friends in Holland is, please do not support any separatists in Iran, any Kurdish or Baluch or any Arab separatists. This is not what the people of Iran want. We, the supporters of Israelis and Zionists who want good relations between the people of Iran and the people of Israel, must support Iran's territorial integrity. The state of Israel supports and recognizes Iran's territorial integrity. We do not support anybody in Iran who wants to carve out, declare independence for any ethnic groups. And please also stay away from that.
Another question here is, what part of the population do you think still supports the regime?
Very good question.
Do you foresee a civil war?
I tell you what worries me. People say, when the regime falls, how are you going to feel? Yeah, I'm going to feel elated. Going to go back to Iran probably the first month. Be in a state of ecstasy and happiness, visiting all friends and distant relations, but then it's going to be depression, because then you're going to find out about the mass graves in Iran. You're going to find out about the pedophilia, the victims of pedophilia by the regime. There's a lot of pedophiles within this regime. It's incredible. We only heard about one case, somebody who's close to Khamenei. There's a lot of pedophiles within this regime. We're going to find out about all the victims of torture. And what worries me is also people settling scores. There are people who lost their loved ones on the 9th of January, 7th and 8th. And I worry that if there's a revolution, they're going to go to the homes of the people who they suspect or they believe killed their sons, and they're going to slaughter them. And that, of course, that worries me. So it's going to be very important to have the support of the security services. But there's a lot of people in Iran, they're openly saying that they want to hang mullahs, the regime clerics, from streetlights. Some of them are even assigning streetlights for the specific mullah. It's unbelievable. There's such incredible anger in Iran. It's beyond anything that we can appreciate. I'm sure the people of Gaza feel the same towards Hamas, but
yeah, but the people are not armed.
No, they're not armed. People, in Iran, they're not violent. Iranians, when you're born in a country which for the past 47 years has gone through 8-year war, and there's so many proxy wars and sanctions, it's just they haven't taken up arms. Will they do that? I don't know. But they haven't taken up arms. They reject violence, a lot of them, but some of them could be driven to it because of what the regime is doing. It's a very, very, very difficult situation. They're hoping that we kill all the regime people and then they can take over. We can't do that. We'll do part of it. But what happens afterwards, I honestly don't know. But I tell you something interesting just before we finish. I can go until 50 if you want. It's okay. Touch wood. There's been no siren, so let's see. It's a bit of good luck. Let's roll with it. They're attacking. They're attacking. I'm sorry if I'm laughing. They're attacking the gas fields of Qatar and Emirates, which I don't like. Emiratis are our friends. And they're attacking the Saudis. They're attacking the Kuwaitis. And these countries, ladies and gentlemen, each one of them has an air force that is much better than Iran's. Much better. Iran doesn't have an air force. Its aircraft are from the 70s. The Saudis have got Eurofighters. They've got F-15s. I think their air force is second in terms of modernity to next to ours. But they don't do anything. Babkas. Nothing. But, they are vulnerable to attacks against the regime energy infrastructure, but they can withstand it because they have sovereign wealth funds that are billions upon billions. I don't know, 50, 60, 100 billion. They have not yet attacked Iran's energy oil fields. But if they do, they could bring a collapse within the regime. The regime is incredibly vulnerable and they could attack it, and it is possible. Should that happen, then this situation is going to escalate very, very quickly because the Iranian regime is going to enter panic mode. They don't expect the Persian Gulf countries to attack them. They see them as spoiled children who like to have shiny weapons but never have the what's the polite word spine to use it. So, but they could be proven wrong, and I really hope our Emirati friends prove them wrong.
Would actually the fact that the Gulf states are being attacked help the Israeli relations? Maybe quickly sign the Abraham Accords with Saudi Arabia?
Not as long as we have idiots like Mr. Itamar Ben-Gvir and Smotrich in this government.
Yeah.
They are racist. They are racist. These people see Arabs and Muslims as lesser beings. And it disgusts me that we have them in our government as a human being and as a Jewish person and as a Zionist with values just like you. Racism is something you only wish on your enemies, not you don't want it for yourself. It's a disease. Racism, the racists say that they are racist to defend their own people, but no, history has shown that the only thing racists have done is feed poison to their own people, have caused more damage to their own people than to the other side. I feel very strongly about that. Sorry.
Understandable. Thank you. I have another question regarding the status of Hezbollah. They joined yesterday, and they're being more of a client of Iran than a mere proxy. And their decision to launch an attack on Israel, much to the anger of the Lebanese government. To what extent could this war mean the end of Hezbollah?
Oh, Hezbollah was severely beaten. The first time I think in recent history, Israel rewrote the books on warfare by being the first standing army to defeat a guerrilla force. This has never happened in recent history. We defeated Hezbollah because of the Beeper operation, and then afterwards, Hezbollah people were being picked out repeatedly. But Hezbollah will be there as long as Iran is there. They are a little late to the party, but they are paying a price for it. And, Lebanese are sick and tired of this. They're tired of this. Hezbollah's, everybody accuses, some Americans of being Israel firsters. Hezbollah is Iran firsters. If you're looking for a mercenary, it is Hezbollah. I don't expect the Lebanese to like us. But we withdrew from their country. I think it was a terrible decision to occupy Lebanon for 18 years. But we withdrew every inch of Lebanese land according to UN Resolution 425. Every single inch of Lebanese land we evacuated. What did Hezbollah do? It continued with the war. It came after us because it's a mercenary. It dragged Lebanon into war. I'm sure you have many Lebanese friends in Holland who are against Hezbollah, and with good reason. Probably the reason why they're in Holland is because of what Hezbollah has done to the Lebanese economy and to Lebanon. And yes, we are hoping that as part of this process of degrading Iran's military and economic infrastructure, Hezbollah is also going to be degraded, but we are also right now fighting them. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure you've all been to Israel. You have friends in Israel. Since October 7th, this country is being pulled into It's amazing how much pressure we are under. It's amazing how much pressure we are under from all sides, from our enemies, from a government that is weakening our democracy, which is one of the 10 commandments of Zionism, is to have an independent judiciary. The whole reason God gave us 10 commandments was because he wanted an independent judiciary, because he didn't want Judaism to depend on a person. He wanted Judaism to be a rule of law religion rather than a person-centric religion. I don't want to get into a compare and contrast, but just look what happened to Islam after Muhammad died, and look what happened to Judaism after Moses died. We continued. There wasn't this fighting that we see in Islam between the Shia and the Sunnah. We continued because this is a religion of laws. It's not a religion of persons. We don't even know where Moses is buried. And the same applies to Zionism. Zionism is a political ideology of self-independence, self-determination for Jewish people based on rule of law, equality for all of our citizens, and separation of powers. And while we were fighting our enemies, we were fighting this huge, unprecedented assault on one of the central tenets of Zionism. And we are continuing, and we are standing up. And I'm so proud of our young people. I teach them at Reichman University. My students do 3 months, 4 months, 5 months Miluim. I can't begin to tell you what joy it gives me to see that our future is in the hands of these young people. They're really tremendous.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your talk, and stay strong over there, and safe. And we can all just hope for a better Middle East after this war, where everybody lives in more freedom and with less terrorism than we have so far.
Next year in Tehran, inshallah.
Yeah, next year in Tehran. I hope so.
I really
hope
hope
you so much. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
We will be thinking of you. And now I'm going to say something in Dutch.
Sorry if I wasn't dressed in a tie and a suit. It's just I got to be ready to go to the shelter. So I also forgot to apologize for that. I'm usually much better dressed than this.
We're not so formal. It's all good. Thank you. En dank u allemaal voor het kijken. Het is goed om te zien dat zoveel mensen vanavond zijn aangesloten. Als CIDI zitten we natuurlijk ook bovenop al het nieuws. En proberen we de feiten en de achtergronden boven water te krijgen. Om ook de politici te informeren. Zeker nu we te maken hebben met een nieuwe Tweede Kamer. Het zijn geen makkelijke tijden. Maar ik dank jullie allemaal voor de betrokkenheid en de support. En nou, ik hoop dat dit een interessante avond was voor iedereen. En hopelijk tot een volgende keer. En veel dank allemaal. Fijne avond. Dag. Thank you, Meïr. I'm gonna close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.